Good Morgan people, Shadow Eater, one angry pagan here. Just wanted to, I don't know, go over a few things. I think. I mean, if anyone's seen me in YouTube chats over the past, I don't know, 3 days, you'd have seen me saying something that sounds like it comes from some kind of, like, those Chinese rice cookie things, fortune cookies. But this is, I mean, to me, I felt like this came from the goddess Frigg, but these lines, these words, they just won't leave my head. So, understanding breeds empathy. Both breed wisdom. To get any of them, one needs acceptance. Let's take acceptance first. To be able to accept, politically speaking, to be able to accept the reality of the material situation that we are in means that we can understand the problems better. If we can't even accept the problems that we have, how do we understand them? Understanding breeds empathy. Now, empathy doesn't just mean sympathy. It does empathy. To have empathy means that you are able to relate to other people's emotions. You're allowed to. It means you're able to gain insight into that person because you have empathy. You understanding breeds empathy. Now, that empathy can lead to either sympathy, pity, contempt, or love. But from that, you get wisdom. You're able to make wiser choices based on accepting the material reality of the situation, understanding that, empathizing with the people in that situation, and being able to make wiser decisions because of it. Now, this doesn't mean that logic doesn't have a place to play, because of course it does. Logic should underline all of it. But the point here is that we need to accept the reality, the material reality of the situation. Now, as I understand it, in this country, just talking about the UK, or more specifically England, England isn't totally lost. We can still do better. We have the seeds for progress in this country. The problems are manifold, though. The problems that make utilizing those seeds of progress harder are manifold. They are many. We, on the left, I feel, have an issue where one of the great things about the left is our principles. Yeah, our principles towards equanimity, towards equality, towards equity. But that same principled outlook leads us to argue with ourselves more than it does lead us to argue with our actual enemy, the right. the conservative mindset, which is to hold us back or move us backwards. I get that holding those principles is important. I have my own principles, and there are some that I will not drop for anything. However, as someone who believes themselves to be practical in their thinking, I can't sacrifice, in my eye, I cannot sacrifice wisdom for ideology. I've accepted the material situation we are in. Brexit has happened. The UK voting public is not socialist. So from there, we need to see how we can move forward from that. Like this stuff has already happened. It's fact. And I think, again, we on the left tend to get distracted by our own arguments against our own allies, ourselves. Because we all have different ideas. And too many of us are purists. You will not, they will not compromise their principles, any of their principles, in any way at all. Now, in some ways, I can applaud this. In other words, I condemn it because it means that compromise is either made that much more difficult or impossible. Historically speaking, left-wing parties in the West have not been able to win, in large part because we argue with ourselves and split our own vote. This is where the other problem of my fellows on the left seem to have is they will not accept the material reality of electoralism. They don't like it. In some ways, I don't like electoralism. But that is the material situation we are in. That is the material reality to which we find ourselves. So to try and work the system as if the system isn't the way it is to me, quite frankly, ridiculous and dangerous. We don't have PR. We don't have a quick route into the EU. So those who are purist in their ideology and demand these things now, I feel, do not accept the reality of the situation, do not understand the reality of the situation, and fail to empathise with their own allies and gain wisdom. They think many, and it's not just the left, there are people across the spectrum seem to think that what they think is wisdom in of itself. Now, the facts are the left has to compromise, because otherwise we won't take power at all, unless we violently take over the government, which I do not advocate. Apart from a revolution, this is the material situation, and it's not going to change unless either some people decide that like they can organize properly and incite a revolution, Or, which is something I think is more likely, we will continue to push for more progressive policies through electoralism, and given that the demographics, especially in the West, are changing towards a more leftist outlook, given that the older generations are dying off and the younger generations are not moving to the right, I think the left really misunderstands the situation, and nor do they look at the big picture. I'm on the left. I want to see the public ownership of the nationalization, public ownership of all public services. I want to see the decommodification of housing. No, I want to see, for a start, reparations towards, the descendants of slaves. I would actually repeal that act in Parliament that said that we had to pay back the slavers. I would actually legislate to have that money come back from the families of the slavers. Why should they have been fucking subsidized when they were doing evil? But despite these being my principles, I recognize and accept the fact that these things are unlikely to happen within my lifetime. As a socialist, what I must work towards, therefore, is progressive policies that move us forward, that help us evolve in a way that progresses us instead of regressing us. Evolution is messy, and that works for societal, cultural, and political evolution as well. It is messy. There are signs as to which way our society is likely to go within the next 100 years, but it's not certain. Therefore, we need to press for progressive policies. And I don't believe that treating the best vehicle for that as the enemy is the best move. And I'm talking about the Labour Party. The Labour Party isn't socialist, as much of a shame as that is. The Labour Party are supposed to be the party for the workers, which means that they are the party for the broad population, and largely the broad population is centrist. Unfortunately, being centrist means that you can be economically centre-left, but socially centre-right, or vice versa, which makes things even more difficult. Which brings Labour to the point it's at, where it tries to appeal to as much of the centre ground as possible, whilst trying to stay away from going towards the right, actually going right into the right wing. Now, you can call me naive if you like. I don't care, because this is the material situation that we find ourselves in. Electoralism is the material reality. You have to work with that system. Working against the system doesn't change the system as fast as the people think. In fact, more often than not, working against the system tends to strengthen the system, because they look for ways to strengthen what they're resistant against. If we can change the system from the inside changes are more effective and the less, what's the word, antagonistic. I would rather the left be less antagonistic towards the general populace. It's saying something coming from me, considering how much I rant about the stupidity of the general populace, but the reality is the general populace hold the voting intention pretty much of our country, of our nation, of our country, of our union. Now, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be organisations outside the political parties to try and move, say, for example, the Labour Party further left. I'm not against that at all. What I argue with is people arguing against working within the Labour Party to effect change, as well as working outside the Labour Party to effect change. It sounds hypocritical, but it isn't. In fact, these two things can work in tandem if we on the left could actually organise properly and actually recognise ourselves as allies across the left spectrum, rather than seeing the centre left, rather than the far left seeing the centre left as enemies when they're not. Generally speaking, the centre left want similar policies, if not the same policies, as what the far left want. They're just not as antagonistic about it. Now, me personally, I would rather, there are some things I would rather move faster on than the centre-left would rather, which would put me into an antagonistic view towards some of the voting public. But I think most of what I've had to say to people within my area, they've agreed with. And it's because I didn't put a radical agenda to them. I put slow, steady progress. Putting in foundations for a solid base to make progress from. Because the Labour Party didn't do that last time. The Tories never do it. But the Labour Party failed to do it last time. This is something that Rachel Reeves pointed out in her speech. In her May speech, or whatever it's called. Again, I bring us back to the beginning here. Understanding breeds empathy. Both breed wisdom. To get any of them, one needs acceptance. If we on the left cannot accept the material situation and reality, then how do we expect to get any of our policies through? Pragmatism over idealism. All day. Right, it's been Shadowy Tom and Angry Pagan. I really want to stop having a go at the left. At my own people. But it's really getting annoying. I'm not a centrist. You can call me a centrist all you like. I'm not a centrist. Because I don't agree with pandering to everything that the voting public wants. These things have to come to compromise. And the absolutist thinking that is going on right now on all sides is hindering any progress that we can make. So yeah, once again, Shadow Eater, One Angry Pagan. I hope you guys can understand where I'm coming from. I don't want people to stop advocating for socialist policies outside the party system. I do hope those same people can understand that electoralism is the material reality of the situation. It is. It just is. Aneurin Bevan said that Aneurin Bevan, Nye Bevan's aim was to use the weapons of it was to use the weapons of the ruling class as a sword point against themselves, against them. It like he was socialist, very socialist, but he recognized that just bitching from the outside wasn't going to affect change. Let me know what you guys think. Leave me some comments. Give me a like if you like, and if you want to share, please share. Bless the Thursday, everyone. Good way to see you.